This is my home, a tent pitched illegally in the forest. My entire belongings are a fishing rod and this worn-out bike that's probably seen better days. Even so, I have a huge dream: to earn $1 million and build a real castle. Sounds absurd? Maybe, especially when you're starting from absolutely nothing. Will I make it? Let's find out. So I get on my bike and head out into the world because first I need to earn my very first money. And for that we'll use the most obvious thing, the fishing rod. I may not be the best fisherman, but I believe we'll manage to catch something and make that first small step. The river seems like the perfect place to start fishing. Supposedly it's full of huge fish, not like in the sea. The one tourists, as they say, pee into. Sounds promising, so it's time to start the adventure. Our first serious goal, make 2,000. That's where we'll begin the road to $1 million and to my dream castle. It started off pretty nicely because despite having absolutely no skill, my first catch was a fish worth a clean 100. A moment later I caught another one, this time twice as expensive, and right after that yet another fine specimen. Within a few minutes I had almost half a grand to my name and I was already thinking this was going to be easy. Of course it couldn't stay that perfect. The next catch was a tire. To this day I have no idea how my poor fishing rod was supposed to pull something like that out, but whatever. Luckily fate took pity on me because right after the tire I landed the biggest fish of my short fishing career. $400 in one go. I was already close to halfway to my goal, but you know how it is. After the highs there's always some trash. Literally. Right after that I pulled in another fish for 200, then another one, and just when I thought my luck was back I reeled in a bucket, because why not? And after the bucket something weird I can't even describe. If you know what that is, let me know in the comments because I still have no idea. Fortunately, after that streak of junk I hooked another record fish for 400, which got me closer to my goal than anything before. I added another little fish for 100 on top of that and finished with a catch worth 200. And just like that, after all that chaos, my balance finally showed the long-awaited $2,000. After a successful fishing trip, I decided that before I start investing the money I'd earned, I deserved a quick nap in my tent. So I jumped on my bike, went back home, and crashed like a log. After the nap, it was already midday, and I had a little business meeting with Grandpa. We were going to lease a field. This is where the real game for $1 million begins. Yes, you heard that right. I leased a field. And before anyone says that's completely unrealistic, remember that in the real world, farmers really do lease fields to each other for a couple of years. It's a normal thing. And as for that, I'll tell you more in a video about realistic mods that will be coming to the channel soon. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. In the meantime, this is what my rented field looked like. Oats were growing on it, fully ready to harvest. A perfect moment for the harvest. And here I'll surprise you, we're not going to lease any machines. Instead, I bought this little handheld combine for $1,500. For many it's a toy, but for me it's the perfect solution for a freshly leased tiny field. I immediately headed out to the field to harvest the oats. I mowed for a bit and then a thought hit me. I still had some cash left, so I hired a worker to finish the job, and in the meantime I could run to the store for another purchase, a trailer, because somehow we need to sell that grain, right? As soon as I brought the trailer to the field, I ran straight back to the store for yet another purchase. A baler, also a manual one for those tiny little bales. Unfortunately, when I got back to the field with the baler, my worker had already quit. The reason? I was bankrupt again. I had no money left to pay him. So I decided to do exactly what I did before, earn a few extra hundred in my favorite way, so I could afford to hire the worker again. The road to $1 million is never easy, but at least it's interesting. I caught a few fish, some junk, and to my huge surprise, a collectible item that sold for a full 1,000. Thanks to that, my balance went up to almost 1,500, so I had money to keep the worker and calmly continue the work. So I hired him again and got back to baling. The worker quite efficiently filled the first grain tank, so it was time to empty it, and I have to admit, it looked pretty funny. I pulled up with my tiny trailer, and realistic it was definitely not, but the important thing is that it worked. I emptied the tank and went back to work with the baler. I baled all the straw on the field, and when I caught up with the worker harvesting the grain, I parked the boiler to the side and ran to the store for one more purchase. This time a second trailer, specifically for bales. It wasn't expensive, and the comfort it gives you while working is huge. When I got back to the field, the worker already had a full grain tank and was waiting to unload. So I grabbed the trailer and took care of it. He didn't pour much into it. The trailer's capacity is ridiculously small, but it was enough to head to the sell point. For the grain we'd collected so far, I got $2,000, which I consider a really good result, especially given that just moments earlier we were completely bankrupt. The road to $1 million was finally starting to pick up. I returned to the field and immediately emptied the combine again because the tank was almost full. I waited just a moment and the trailer filled up with grain once again, so I headed back to sell it. Another $2,000 came in. Now things were finally starting to roll. When I came back, I got straight to baling because I had a lot of catching up to do and my worker wasn't slowing down for even a second. After a short while, he was already close to finishing the job, but the tank wouldn't fit everything. So I collected the grain he had stored up and went off to sell it again. And once more, another $2,000 landed in my account. When I returned to the field, the worker had finished the entire harvest and I still had some baling left. I didn't want to leave it for later, so I rolled up my sleeves and finished the job. Once all the straw was baled, I hopped into the combine, emptied the remaining grain into the trailer, and parked the machine to the side. Then I went off to sell the last batch of grain for the season. It didn't sell for much, but overall, I now had over $6,000 on my account. As it turned out, if I had done everything myself, I would have had about $1,500 more. The worker was insanely expensive because he charges by the hour, not by the job. But oh well, you live and learn. I parked all the harvesting equipment, but the field still had bales waiting, and not a few, a lot. But before I started loading them, I ran to the store for another tool, a cultivator, since I needed to prepare the field for sowing. Thankfully, this model wasn't too expensive. The road to $1 million is progressing slowly, but the farm work is getting faster, and it's starting to get really interesting. At first, I planned to immediately hire a worker to prepare the field, but in the end I decided to gather all the bales first and only then move to the field work. You can now make your guesses in the comments about how many bales I managed to fit onto the trailer. I guarantee the result will surprise you. The task turned out to be harder than I thought. At first everything was going smoothly, but then the bales started sliding all over the place, mostly because of my mistake. When I was repositioning the trailer, I didn't strap them down and they just kept shifting. So I decided to stack them all over again, this time as stable as possible, and only then start adding as many as I could on top. But when the bales started falling off the trailer, even with the straps on, I figured that was the moment to finally say, stop. There was no point loading more if I was just gonna lose half of them on the way to the sell point. So here it is, my masterpiece. I honestly lost count of how many bales are on there, so if anyone manages to count them, boast about it in the comments. The trip to the sell point, to my huge surprise, went by without any major incidents. I didn't lose a single bale. Time to find out how much I'll get for all of this, and how much closer it will bring us to that dream million. For selling the bales, I got over $1,600, so the result was really decent, but when I got back to the field, I decided I wouldn't sell any more bales. I parked them to the side. They'll be my safety net in case I ever run out of cash. It's better to have an emergency stash than panic later. Once the field was cleared of bales, I decided to go to sleep to recharge my energy. At dawn the next day, I wanted to get straight to sowing. In the morning, I headed to the store, but not for the bike, which was still standing there, but for another machine, specifically of course a seeder. Also handheld, tiny and cheap, so perfectly suited to my modest budget. For a seeder like this, buying a whole pallet of seed for over $1,000 would be completely stupid. So instead, I stocked up on bags of seed that you can load by hand. Once I'd poured all the seed into the tank, I headed to the field to finally get to work. New day, new task, and every step brings us closer to that million. I started working full steam ahead. I made a few passes with the cultivator, then hired a worker and jumped into the seeder myself so as not to waste a single moment. I won't bore you with just the sowing. It went pretty smoothly, though I have to admit that at one point I even hired a worker to run the seeder so I could take a little break. And just like that, another day passed, or rather another month, because at this pace time in this game flies by insanely fast. Once the sowing was finished, I went to sleep for a few more months. After all, the field won't grow any faster just because I stare at it, and I'm not planning to sit there watching. How many months exactly I slept for and what I actually planted on that field, you'll find out in the next episode of this series. For now, you can leave your guesses in the comments, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, because the gameplay is definitely about to pick up in some surprising ways. See you soon!